All right, a federal court, as we discussed a little bit earlier, a federal court has temporarily blocked the Biden administration from diverting $1.4 billion in funding that was appropriated by Congress to build a border wall. The decision follows a January 2021 proclamation by President Biden terminating the Trump national emergency at the southern border. And he then, at that time, ordered a pause on the construction of the border wall. Well, some attorneys who had some guts, attorney generals from Missouri and Texas, to be specific, they sued. And they were arguing that reappropriation of funding was illegal and that it violated the separation of powers, like we were talking about a little bit earlier. Well, joining me now to discuss this is one of those attorneys generals, Andrew Bailey from Missouri. He is the one who actually led this lawsuit. Attorney General Bailey, always an honor to have you on Washington Watch. Thank you for coming back on.
Hey, thank you so much for having me and for covering this important story. This is an enormous win for the rule of law and the separation of powers and to try to stop this Biden invasion.
Well, it is a huge win. And let me first of all say congratulations. This would not have happened had it not been for great leaders like yourself stepping up to the plate. So tell us what this court ruling will require.
Well, this puts an end to the Biden administration's attempt to vex, harass, and delay the construction of the border wall that Congress specifically appropriated money for. The appropriations power matters. It's the power of the purse. It's the power given by the Constitution to the Congress as a check and balance on executive authority. The executive is supposed to enforce the laws that are written, and Congress writes those laws. And Congress commanded the president to erect new border barrier systems, period. But what President Biden did, as you pointed out, is on day one in office, sign an executive order saying, well, fences don't work. We're not going to build any more border walls. Dripping with irony, considering that in 2006, as a United States senator, Senator Biden advocated and supported the Secure Fence Act. So back then he thought border barrier systems worked, but then when he takes office as the chief executive and is charged with enforcing the law, he changes his tune. Luckily, the court did the right thing here, looked at the language in the appropriations bill, the commandment that Congress had issued, and said that the president is not allowed to spend your tax dollars in order to vex, harass, and delay the commands of Congress.
Yeah, this is a huge decision. What does this say, if anything, particularly to the issue of this administration explicitly ignoring constitutional obligations to abide by Congress's appropriation laws? Did this ruling say anything, a slap against this ignoring congressional appropriation laws?
It absolutely is an admonishment of the chief executive to follow the laws as written. You don't get to make up your own. If you want to change the law, go to Congress and get the law changed, but you don't get to do whatever you want. This isn't a dictatorship. That's why we have the separation of powers. The Constitution is intended to be a structural diagram upon which it creates the playing field upon which we play the game of democracy. And the idea is to protect the government, protect us from the government. And the government exists to protect our rights. And one of those rights is to have a sovereign nation. And that means securing the southern border. Look, there have been 1,100 reported incidences of human trafficking in Missouri in 1 year alone, making Missouri now the fourth worst state in the nation for human trafficking. Because of our geography at the crossroads of the nation and our extensive interstate system, we've had more than 1,500 deaths from fentanyl poisoning, 43 innocent children who died from accidental exposure to fentanyl. These harms are directly attributable to Biden's open border policies. This isn't an accident. Biden has the tools on the books, but he refuses to use them. And this is just one case in point where Congress gave him the money, gave him the materials, gave him the commandment, and he ignored it. And it undermines the rule of law and the credibility of our entire system of government when you have this lawless chief executive refusing to do his job.
It most certainly does. And even they came after you. I mean, you stood in there, but the Biden administration was arguing that you had no standing to even bring this case to begin with. And the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals thought otherwise.
Yeah, tell that to the parents of the 43 children who lost their lives from fentanyl exposure. And I think the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals recognize that the state of Missouri is a border state at this point, because every policy decision the Biden administration has made has been to pervert the law, undermine the rule of law, and open the border. There are now more illegal border crossings than there are citizens of my home state of Missouri. So this is clearly a crisis point. This is, I believe, the first time that a state has taken Biden to court over a border issue and won. So this is a major victory in support of the border wall that we know works, because President Trump used the same tools that were on the books to reduce illegal border crossings by more than 90%. So that the tools and the resources are there. It just requires a chief executive who's willing to enforce the laws that are given to him by Congress.
And there's got to be some accountability for those who refuse to enforce the laws that are there before them. And that is something that I think definitely needs to be exposed. This is part of the problem that aggravates Americans, where there appears to be a two-tiered system. Attorney General, I can't thank you enough. I thank you for having the guts to stand up initially on this issue, for the staying power to go through it to the end, and for having a tremendous victory. We all are deeply appreciative of your stance. Thank you, and thank you for joining us on Washington Watch.
Jody, thank you so much for having me on.